good. All right. So it is being recorded. And let's this is not, I have a piece of paper here somewhere that I've already lost, but give me your initial impressions. Like the book, not like the book.
Love the book. I'll start. Love the book. It was interesting because I was talking to somebody else who read Future, Be Your Future Self, same author. And he was like questioning, he's in the middle of a gap and game now and asking, is this guy like schizophrenic? Yes, I am. No, I'm not. I mean, let's talk about our future. Let's talk about our past. And I thought that was a really interesting take on it. I don't know if anybody else on the call read Be Your Future Self besides Brian and I, but it's crazy because Be Your Future Self is looking at your future. And here in this book, he's talking about always measuring backwards. So I thought that an interesting thing to open with, maybe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I resonated with the choose to be happy, don't be searching to be happy. That whatever event is going on, find the happiness in that. That comes natural to me, but I've never really heard it, and I appreciated hearing that.
Yeah, that's a great one. That is a great one.
I appreciate the book because within the span of when I read it and within a day, I had a moment with my son who I had to teach the exact same thing where he said, I'm going to be the best lacrosse player in the world. And I said, easy, killer. Let's talk about that. And I talked about the whole gap and game and ideal focus and things like that. And it was very relevant. So
Yep. And then Pete and then Todd tripped his son as he tried to run by and said, "See, I'm already better than you."
That's right. That's right. So the core hypothesis that we tend to get stuck as human beings measuring ourselves against an ideal, and instead we should be measuring ourselves only against the endpoint or the starting line. That it seems like it resonated with everybody. No one wants to argue with this premise at all. Eh?
No, it's pretty amazing because I actually was pretty touched in the beginning of the book by, I felt like the author was reading my mail because I was so proud to be the guy chasing after the horizon all the time. And after reading the book, I can't say that that's a good way to measure success is looking at your future. It was just very, very disturbing to me in a good way to what I use this term a lot, but jerk the slack right out of me. And I thought it was really good. I mean, I'm excited to go back through the book, which I have a second time already, but study it and actually apply a lot of it in my life.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And not only looking against the horizon, but looking against other people, right? Comparing yourself to your neighbor or something. So, well, I don't have two cars. I only have one. Versus, well, last week I didn't have a car. Now I have one. You know, that's more valuable than that comparison.
So there's I want to ask about your personal experience and how it matches up to what Dan Sullivan is talking about. And there's two ways to look at that. One is, have you found yourself, and Ken already admitted, yeah, I've caught myself in that trap where I'm measuring myself against this impossible ideal that I can never actually attain. And do you agree that when you've done that, it has led to dissatisfaction, misery, depending on where you are on that scale? Is that your experience?
I kind of like how Chris started off with it, saying he's usually, I don't know if I'm going to repeat it exactly the way you said it, Chris, but you're more naturally inclined to be in that happy state. I feel like the book kind of gave you like clarity on how to be in that state. Because if you're constantly looking for something that is unattainable, which is the horizon, you could constantly be dissatisfied with yourself.
No doubt. No doubt. You're by the way, you are by definition never satisfied with yourself. How could you be? You're always looking for the next step.
Yep.
There's no moment where you go, finished. You can't.
Yeah.
So then the other way to measure it is when you have been measuring yourself against the gain, do you see that is a more satisfying, or it leads to more happiness, however that is? Have you ran the experiment in your life and you agree that is what the end result is?
I'll let someone else go real quick.
Depends on the subject. So losing weight, no. Some business success. It's I would say there's lots of things I look at of where I was as a younger man, because I don't consider myself super successful in business, but I see where I was and say, oh, well, look at these things I'm able to do now that I never even thought I would be interested in doing when I was in college or in my 20s or 30s. So that point of view, I think is very
it's an interesting, you're drawing an interesting dichotomy, Todd, and I'm guessing that we come up with more examples of that. You talked about like losing weight, where I can see every time your weight fluctuates up and down, that you're inviting yourself back into the misery of saying, well, here I am again. I've gained weight. I've lost weight. I've gained weight. I've lost weight. So interesting perspective that I hadn't really thought about, because they're always talking about it as if there's this continuum where you're always getting better over time. So you can always look backwards and see progress. But that example shows that no, sometimes you're doing this.
Very challenging part. Yeah, that's probably I would say that's the most challenging and probably the most common across most people, is that physical, because you're older anyways. So you're by nature not as physical fit as you were. Even if you're in the best shape of your life, you're still worse than you were when you're in the 20s.
Yeah.
Right. So
you're getting weaker, you're getting slower, you're getting fatter, you're getting I'm losing my hair.
So I suppose that's maybe there's a different interpretation of a situation like that. That's where I'm not thinking of. But certainly from a personal point of view of even as a father, just some of the thoughts of how I would approach being a father, even if it's too late for a young kid, because I don't have a young kid anymore. How I'd approach it, I understand it better now. So where the opportunity presents itself, I find it very interesting that you can use your fatherhood or your parenthood to train employees. Just got to be careful how you say it to them. They don't like it sometimes. But yeah.
As I say to my kids, is probably not the way to start that conversation.
Even my kid understands this.
Right.
Yes, right. Even my kid understands this. I like that one.
What I found myself using, Brian, is when a situation arises, I'm already asking myself, gap or gain, how am I going to look at this situation? It's definitely made me more I don't know how to articulate it. It's just very like crystallized in my mind on how to handle conflict, if you will, like family conflict in the office, whatever issues are arising. It's like, where am I going to be at with this? And try to find something good out of the situation and not turn it into just always negative.
Yeah. And by the way, that is an amazing habit. And I think it actually takes what they've talked about here and takes it even a little bit kind of a little bit higher, although they do touch on this idea of finding a gift in every situation. But it reminds me very much of Shirzad Shamin wrote a book years ago called Positive Intelligence. And in Positive Intelligence, I don't want to get too deep into the philosophy that he's talking about there, but the way he says it is, in every negative situation, discipline yourself to find 3 gifts in the situation. And, Sullivan talks a lot about, I learned something, I wouldn't make that mistake again, all those kind of things. But, there's always lots you get out of things that people normally think of as negative.
I think that's a famous quote from some famous rich guy right now that says, the person who failed the most is the most successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you haven't failed, then you probably haven't learned anything, and probably haven't improved, and probably haven't, so.
There's a
I
lot.
think Michael Jordan also said, I failed over and over again. That's precisely why I succeed, or something like that.
Yeah.
One of the things that was it called, trying to think what it was. Was it called mental subtraction? I really, do you remember that part of the book? The mental subtraction part?
Remind us what mental subtraction was.
It was, okay, so you don't like your dinner? Good, you're not having any dinner. Do you remember that?
Oh,
part?
yeah.
He was talking about the kids in the book and the cookie and then the spoons and crap. I thought that was excellent. You're ticked off at your spouse. Okay, now you don't have one. You're mad about your job, your work. Okay, now you don't have a job. Now how do you feel? And that was like, again, jerking the slack right out of you. It's like, okay, there's probably something that you're making a bigger deal out of it than it actually is. And in the big scheme of things, it's probably not a big deal. So take that problem out of your life, whatever that is, and see how you feel after that. And again, talking about putting perspective around things, that's an eye opener right out of the gate. It's like, there's a lot of little nuggets like that I could have taken out of the book. That was a good one.
That's a great one. That's a great one. I completely agree.
Now, Brian, were you just teasing me? You didn't remember it, or were you just trying to extrapolate that out of me?
No, I really didn't. And maybe it's just the name that threw me. I remember what you said after you said it, but
You called it mental
I
subtraction.
didn't remember the concept of mental subtraction.
I love the two words, mental subtraction. I mean, that's pretty cool. I actually, I didn't catch it the first time through the book. It was my second time through it that I caught it. I'm like, how did I miss that the first time? It was great.
Is that where they gave the kid the cookie and the one kid complained he had a smaller cookie?
Yeah. He started with nothing and he had a bite of cookie, and now he was still ticked off that he had a bite of cookie, but it wasn't big enough.
The now controversial comedian Louis C.K. once did a bit that is fantastic. And the bit was on YouTube, it was called "Everything is Amazing and Nobody's Happy." And the story he tells is about, he gets on an airplane. It's the very first time he was on an airplane with Wi-Fi in the sky. So the purser comes on and says, "Great news. We've got this new thing. We're going to let you try it for free." So everyone on the plane jumps on this Wi-Fi. And he said it was incredible. I mean, here we are, 30,000 feet in the sky, and we're on Wi-Fi. And he said, and then the system went down. And the purser comes out and says, "I'm so sorry for your inconvenience, but it temporarily went out," or something. And he said, the guy next to me said, "This is bullshit." And he said, "How quickly the world owes you something that you didn't even know existed until this plane took off."
That's a great example.
That is exactly what we're putting our finger on here.
Yep.
I wanted to, so one of the passages I highlighted is that CEOs are twice as likely to have depression than the general public. 2 times the depression rate. And I want to pick on something that Dan Sullivan said in 10X is easier than 2X, because he said entrepreneurs are better wanters.
You're struggling with that, aren't you?
I am struggling with that because I still don't think I still think there's a lot of nuance there that he's throwing under the carpet. Why, if they're such great wanters, are CEOs struggling so bad? Let me just throw a little gas on the fire. Entrepreneur, this is same book, his words, or Ben Hardy's words, I don't know. Entrepreneurs are more prone to substance abuse as well as depression and suicide. Those super fantastic world-class wanters, who he says wanting is the whole enchilada. It is the path to salvation. Instead of needing, wanting.
Yeah, but what? So the abuse would make sense because that has to do with either competitive advantage, trying to get a competitive edge, or it's it's covering up some your lack of success, so you don't get overwhelmed by the depression and you keep pushing forward. That would make
So-
sense to me.
I see it too, where that how many times do we tell ourselves, well, if I can just hit this mark, everything will be so much better, right? And then we get to that mark and that issue may have gone away, but now we see 7 more or 3 more or one that was much bigger, and
Move the
we spend
goalposts.
all of our time trying to get to that proverbial easy coasting part, but it's not in our nature to coast. So it's we keep fooling ourselves and then wonder why we're surprised at the end of it. That's my take. I don't think I suffer from that, but that would be my take on it.
But
Well,
I think you're dead on.
We have a good example that we're going into in our annual holiday party, where we've got record level of revenue in our company for 20 years. And on some, depending on how you measure it, that's an amazing accomplishment. And on the other hand is, well, we're not quite at a point where we can really dish out bonuses of substance. You think we'd be like flowing with cash? Like, well, not quite, because there's more to that math equation than just the 7 million. But it's like we want to make sure we celebrate that one accomplishment, because that has to be done if we want to keep moving forward. We have to hit that mark no matter what. But recognize the fact that there's work to be done. It pulls at each other.
Yeah, it's almost like trying to straddle, focusing on the gap and the gain at the same time.
I think there was a really good example in I think it was chapter 4 or 5, where he talked about a woman who was a financial advisor. First year made 14,000, and every year after that they kept hitting their numbers, and it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally, somebody had been there for 20 years or something like that, came up to the woman financial advisor and said, "Hey, we always are shooting for a bigger, better number the next year, but we never sit back and celebrate hitting the number that we hit the last year." And I thought that was, it's easy to keep moving that horizon forward and never reaching it. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, Todd.
Well, I'm also interested. What the book was interesting to me is how do we implement this? Sure, it's good for us as leaders to understand it. How do you turn your company into that philosophy? That's a pretty big ask, I suppose, but turning that next step where people that you hire or people that you train think this way.
Oh, I think it'd be relatively easy.
I like that.
Yeah, I think it is, as you're thinking about giving performance evaluations and giving feedback. You're simply pointing out, right? So here, let's say we're doing our values for a second. Mm-hmm. So we say, here's the ideal, right? We've identified this super person and this value, and they could easily say, oh my gosh, right? I'm never going to be the Jerry Weinberg of sales. That's not going to happen. But if you said in the same breath, look at how you started, and look at now how much better you are on teamwork or something, and therefore you measured their progress even while describing the ideal, I think you would create this kind of culture.
So that's a training of also the managers who are reviewing, more than just the people that are going to the review. It's really their job to really put this into practice.
But you could also, as you're thinking about designing your performance evaluation process, design it so that both of those notes are hit, right? Mm-hmm. So reminding everybody what the ideal is, but also, having as part of the evaluation process, here is the progress you have made.
Mm-hmm. I think we need to celebrate success.
Yes.
And I'm guilty of not doing that, because I was always operating with the one-liner that there's no finish line. Interestingly enough, I just started a book. It may be a candidate down the road, Brian. It's called Die With Zero. I don't know if anyone ever heard of that.
Now, is this like a philanthropy book or?
No. It's, as entrepreneurs, we're constantly striving, and we never get to the finish line. We're never satisfied, and we accumulate, in many cases, a lot of money, and don't really enjoy it.
Mm.
And so that's the concept. I've only finished the first chapter, but I bought it yesterday. I find the concept interesting. It just gave me a different approach. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. So the question is, when do you take a look back and celebrate? And
always.
that'd be another question. There'd be another answer to Todd's question, which is, if you're always building in, we celebrate at the end of every project all the things we learned, all the things we did. If at the end of every quarter, at the end of every year, we look back and we celebrate all the things we've accomplished. That's a way of creating the culture around this.
Yeah.
So I say it's easy. The concept is easy, Todd. You're absolutely right. It's hard to do this because it's easy for other things to get in the way, but it's
it's like anything. It's a deliberate discipline to keep constantly focusing on it over and over and over.
yeah.
I think what Jerry's saying is you constantly celebrate. It's his experience.
Absolutely. I wanted, so if the gain is measuring yourself backwards against where you were before, what happens when you're no longer contributing at that level? So we've all had the employee who comes in, does incredible things, and then their activity, their performance, their output drops way back. How do we use the gain then? Are we resetting the ideal to just get back to what you wanted? How do you use it in that? Another way to say that, guys, would be, how do you deal with, or another wrinkle of this, how do you deal with entitlement? I've done all these amazing things, and therefore I should be entitled to do all this incredible stuff. Because to me, that's part of this too.
That's a tough one. I'll let Todd go first.
Well,
You've been voluntold.
Yeah. A thought that maybe if it's properly, this is a big aspect. If it's properly put into the culture that success is based on merit and character and things like that, and integrity versus anything else, including being blunt about entitlement, like just because you're here, you have to have that statement. Maybe just because you've been here 20 years does not mean anything, really, unfortunately. But the good news is we base it on merit, which is what everybody should want to be based on. And frankly, if they don't want that, they're not probably connected to your values anyways, and maybe not a good fit going to that next level. That's my thought.
Well, and I think as you celebrate successes and somebody gets to that point, and you celebrate that as they backslide, it's easier to say, okay, hey, we got to here, but what happened? What would we do different to stay there and go beyond versus sliding backwards?
Got it.
What would your take be, Brian?
I think it's a convenient thing for the author not to deal with, because he probably realizes that that's a problem. And I think it's conspicuous that there's nothing in there about, and I would throw Todd's example of that in there. Those things that you do really well on for a while and then you backslide and stuff, he doesn't address any of that stuff to how to deal with it, because it's pretty sticky as it relates to this concept. It's sticky. It's harder. It makes it less clear and less, like a world beating, you can use it everywhere kind of concept. I want to see if Ken gets this in particular, but maybe some of you have read the book. Which book could this have been lifted from, Ken? When you're in the gain, you value your experiences, all of them. So there are no experiences that you don't say, that was a great experience. What book said that?
Was that Future Self?
No, that is the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. They went on and on about this idea of all experiences are for you. They benefit you. You just aren't looking at how they benefit you. That was a good one. I also found, Todd, I think you were the one who said, Seth Godin said, the rule is simple. The person who fails the most will win. If I fail more than you do, I will win.
That's
Because
what
in order to keep failing, you've been good enough to keep playing.
is that from this book?
Yeah.
Oh, then I got it from that book. That's funny.
Oops.
You know, something that I thought was another good takeaway, if I could jump in. Did you have something else you want to add in really quick, Brian?
No, please go ahead.
He said, another cool one was, it seemed like each chapter I thought kind of had a cool takeaway. The one chapter was the mental subtraction. That was a cool takeaway for me. And then the very next chapter was, what you do at the end of the day determines the rest of your life, how you spend that last hour before you go to bed. And I'm challenged with that because it's like working out for some people is a very difficult challenge. Eating healthy for some people is a very difficult challenge. I think discipline in the area, a third area would be discipline in going to bed, 1, on time,
Mm-hmm.
2, with clarity in your mind of the 3 gains that you got out of that day. And the part that I really like is that one lady, I don't remember what industry she was in, but she was, 400 pounds and she got down to 160 or whatever. But she was saying that she played kickball, did 3 basic things that day, or 3 or 4, and that was a victory. That was success for her. And if you would have asked me, a year ago, just reflecting back on a game here for me, even a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, what would have been a gain for me would have been little things. Like a year ago, I would have made a big deal out of, I closed the deal, I added more revenue, I did this, I did that. That'd be all I would want to talk about. But if I was setting 3 simple goals at the beginning or at the end of every day, to sleep, get enough sleep, to do basics, little things that I think are good victories, that like this heavy lady, who was at one time heavy lady, did. I don't know. I just thought that was really good to reflect the day, an hour. It maybe doesn't have to be an hour. It could be 15 minutes before you go to sleep.
Yeah.
I thought that was excellent.
It's a great example, kind of how to build it into your day, right? Todd was talking about how to build it into a culture. That is at the individual level, building it right into your day. Recognizing your progress, your whatever it is that you value, your steps towards that ideal. Good stuff.
Can I just ask can I ask everybody on the call, do any of you have discipline the last hour of your day before reading this book? I'm not the only one then. You're shaking your head no.
What do you mean? In the last hour before I sleep, I read, I go to bed at the exact same time every night. But what specifically are you talking about in discipline? Because he talked about not like touching any electronic media. I don't touch any electronic media in the half hour before I go to bed, but I don't do it for the full hour.
Yeah, I think all of the. I'm just very challenged by that, and I'm excited for the challenge. I did it last night. I've done it the last couple of nights, and I've really noticed a difference. Now, again, it might wear off on me. I might get back to the norm, but I'm excited about taking that last. I don't care if it's a half an hour to myself and reflecting on the day and the next day. And I believe in the subconscious sleep and all that other stuff. And I think if you prep your mind before you go to sleep, it could be actually working subliminally or subconsciously while you're sleeping. So I'm excited about doing it.
That's fantastic.
I just wondered if anybody else is doing that already.
I do. It's not in the last hour before I go to bed, but it's usually sometime in the early evening. So let's say around 7:00. I journal twice a day. One time a day, I journal how would I like to be tomorrow? And the next time of day, I measure myself against that. So I'm essentially always measuring progress against that, how I wanted to show up. And I'm trying to remember, let me see what I said about the book club. So yesterday I wrote that I wanted to, sorry, I'm trying to type with one hand and it's not going terribly well. By the way, I didn't say anything about the ideal of me using only one hand for, let's see, book club. I said, listen, facilitate wisely, and create a positive ratchet. So then later, I will look back and say, did I accomplish that? At any time, did I zone out, not listen? At any time, did I say something stupid and my facilitation was less than wise? What
does the ratchet mean?
It means I want to consciously focus on giving you guys things that you can take away and create value beyond the people in this group. So theoretically, hopefully you guys go out now and infect other people. So it's taking what we're putting in all this work to read this book and then discuss it, but then other people outside of us get value too. Todd gave a great example of it when he started talking about how do we create a culture like this. So theoretically, if he goes and does that, we just extended the impact of this book and our time in it from here to all the people of Ella Custom Contracting.
Can I ask you a question about your journaling?
Yeah.
I don't journal and I don't have a nightly routine. And sometimes I can tell that affects me. My question about your journaling. So if I heard you right, so you journal and then you go back and reflect on what you wrote. That's
right.
Part of the journaling process for you.
Yep.
Not just the write it down, get that brain active and doing that and then letting it be. You may never read that again. You actually reflect back on those items.
Yes. What I have not done a lot of is actually go back and read what I wrote 3 years ago. I don't do any of that. Yep. But it's a kind of a set the ideal, measure against the ideal, set the ideal, measure against the ideal is kind of the way I do it. But, when I say ideal, I'm not talking about it in the way he's talking about, which is that far off thing that I can't possibly achieve. I set a achievable vision for myself in each of the touch points I have in a day. And then I'm
just trying to learn what you found, how it's useful. I could journal, let's say, and write stuff, right? And with my memory, I'll forget it 5 minutes later. So is it part of the reflection that's very useful? Or is it just the nature of writing it that's actually very powerful, regardless if you ever read it again? I'm just curious who's got experience with that.
For me, it's the writing. There's no doubt. And by the way, there's a third part of this, which is when I'm doing okay, here's the ideal. That's a very clipped, just that part of it. The second part where I'm talking about my ideal, I'll also just say, I'm having a tough time with a relationship, or I'm having a situation that for some reason, I'm just feeling strange about it. I can't get it off my mind. I keep thinking about it. I'm worried about it in a way that just doesn't, it's like I'm coaching myself. I'll have a dialogue with myself on the journal page and say why is this bothering me? And then try to, do root cause analysis. And I'll do that until it resolves itself in my mind. Usually that works. It works surprisingly well.
And if nothing else, it lets you sleep that night. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't sit there and think about it all night.
Yeah.
Sometimes the worst. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
What else? What did you read in here that's got you thinking? By the way, the thing that Ken read that I think he's talking about was they were talking about it, and then some of the statistics that got me was research shows that in the hour before bed, 96.9% of people use their smartphone and 90.8% use their smartphones while in bed just before they sleep. I can honestly say I've never done that. I have never taken my smartphone to bed ever. Like I said, I cut myself off about a half hour before. Maybe it'd be better if it was an hour. I don't know. Where are you guys on that? Are you part of the majority? You use your phone right up until you go to sleep?
I
Yeah.
do.
I'll tell you a funny story about last night. So I always charge my phone in the kitchen so that it doesn't disturb me at night. So when I went in the kitchen to put it in the charger, I always check sports scores before I go to bed. So I noticed that the Red Wings had just gone from being down 1 goal to be up 2 goals. At the same time, the Pistons were tied with 2 seconds to go, and they wound up winning. And so I always check the scores, and then the Harbaugh Bowl. I wanted to see what that was doing, but because sports is such an important part of my life, and then I could go to sleep.
There you go. Do you guys? So I'm fascinated. What keeps you looking at your phone right before the second you go to bed? Jerry gave an answer. He's interested in. He can't stay up all night and watch all the sports, so he at least knows what's happened up to the point where he goes to bed.
Watch teenage girls, because they will take their phone to bed with them. They don't want to-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just be careful about that advice to watch teenage girls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jerry, I thought
That's what I
you
was
were
hung up
saying
on.
is I gotta watch teenage girls on my phone.
I'm talking about my granddaughters.
Yeah.
I like to watch political commentary, especially during the election, right? It was just interesting to hear those topics. I don't get a chance to do that during the day, so I send there and just look at that stuff. But it's totally addictive. It's that dopamine. I just want to see the next video.
Is this TikTok or is this YouTube, or how do you watch this?
YouTube, just YouTube. I don't like TikTok. I believe it's also very addictive. But I fall for it, and YouTube just as good, right? So I'm into that. Sometimes I'm lucky, and I get in the mood to do something I can learn. So like I do some painting stuff, and I like to learn how to do that, or if I like home improvement, so if I learn to do that stuff, so I tell myself it's valuable because I'm learning something. But you could certainly make the argument that my sleep schedule is not very routine.
Yeah.
For me, I don't know why it's weird, and I feel like being that we're all men on the phone, I feel like a little, and going back to Jerry's comment, I feel like a teenage girl because I feel addicted to look at Facebook before I go to bed, and I don't know what it is, but you just want to look to see. I don't even know what I'm looking for. There's nothing there. I guess the reels are kind of interesting to look at. Some boat falling off a trailer going down the middle of the road or what.
Yeah.
I find it entertaining. And I feel brainless and mindless. And so, but I'm going to try not to do that. I didn't do it last night, and I'm going to try to have my quiet time by myself. I got a little spot in my house that I would do that at, and feel real comfortable with. So,
But yeah. I didn't hear it. It's funny because as you guys described it, you didn't really describe negative experiences. So I'm curious, what motivates you to stop looking at it? Because besides Todd saying, well, maybe the political stuff gets me a little wound up, or he didn't quite say that, but that was my impression. Most of you are describing something that sounds inherently pleasant. It doesn't sound bad.
No, it's something for me. It's I'm filling a void of time with something I could do that's more productive. Kind of like what Dan Sullivan is. What's his name again? Dan
Sullivan. Yeah,
Sullivan.
Sullivan. He said he stopped watching TV for 3 years or whatever it was. I don't know if that's even true, because going back to Jerry's point, like, how can you not watch football for 3 years? Or how can you not watch a hockey game for 3 years? Or your granddaughter wants to come over and watch, a Disney movie with you. I mean, I don't know if I believe that 100%. Hasn't watched any TV in 3 years.
He was a Browns fan. That explains why he wouldn't watch football.
I think what I would like to do more of is the journaling, the self-reflecting, and fooling around with other stuff, whether it's watching TV or social media or whatever, is taking the space up in my calendar. So it's not like it's a negative. I think there's something more positive about it doing something else. If there's things on my list that I'm not doing that I'm just not disciplined to do. And,
Yep. That makes perfect sense. If you're worried that you're filling your life with things that are not as fulfilling as something else.
Yeah.
Totally
I'm not getting anything out of watching the boat fall off the trailer going down the middle of the road. I would get more out of journaling or something like that. That would be very insightful for me to be a better person and to have that positive impact you were talking about on others in the future, Brian, if I took more time to do it.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm going to definitely work on in 2025.
I love it.
Yeah.
I would make the case that so my experience of using like YouTube at night, right? It's a bit of escapism, right? So it's just like finally I can be brain dead. I've been working with either numbers all day or I've been talking to people all day. Brian, you get that? So it's like a bet, and same. I come home with my family. I'm either doing things on the house, helping my wife, dealing with kids' problems, whatever it is. By the time I hit the sheets, I can't. I need to decompress. Now my use of the YouTube or something to decompress might not be an effective tool. So I'm not like where Ken is looking, could find time to fill that with more things to learn and do better. I challenge myself to do that, but I think I would be burned out. So I would, my alternative would be finding a solution that decompresses me, lets me escape a little, just to relax and get my brain settled, so I can get a good night's sleep and stuff without. I love to learn all time, but there's a point where I got to turn off, or I just can't handle it anymore. So that would be just my choice of, right? Like if I was a drinker, I might be drinking. That wouldn't be good.
That
It's
would
just
not
my
be good.
drinking, I guess.
Yeah.
So
See that's a good example of the gap in the game. Todd said, I'm watching YouTube. I used to drink myself to sleep. See the game?
all right, thank you. Tonight. Hey, let me explain why this is better.
That's right.
That's not coffee in his cup.
So two quotes, and I'm interested in your reaction. This is from page 126. Far too many people have 10 plus items on their daily to-do list, which is more a sign of being busy than being productive. Second quote from Jim Collins: if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any. Now, I'm curious, guys. I resonate very deeply with the Jim Collins quote. The 10 plus things on your to-do list, I don't equate those two things. And I'm wondering if you see the same thing. And I'm thinking that what I'm doing is I'm looking at my to-do list. So my to-do list starts every day with journal, meditate, stretch, go for a walk. So my to-do list is definitely more than 10 things, all of which I would not consider stopping. And he's saying there's something wrong with having 10 things on your to-do list. And I'm thinking other people are not using on their to-do list putting exercise and journaling and things like that. Do you think that's what the mismatch is, or do you think he's saying something else?
I think that's a mismatch, Brian, because I think people do more than 3 things during the day. It's not like I have 3 things on my to-do list. I think it's things that you might want to get done that you're not doing, or things that you were bad at that now you accomplished and are doing them. Like that one lady who I said played kickball and worked out or whatever she did. She had 4 items on her list, and none of them were a heavy lift, and none of it had to do with work. It was what made her feel successful.
In my opinion, a priority is big picture, whereas a to-do list is not as important.
Yeah, I think the to-dos are if you at the end of the day, if all hell broke loose, and you only had to get 3 things on your to-do list done, those would be your priorities. Everything else,
Jerry,
great. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I'm sorry, Jerry, I viewed it the same way you did, is not having 10 tasks, but having 10 priorities. Then there's there's a mismatch there. But if you're going to itemize your tasks, and eating breakfast is one of them, and kissing your wife goodbye when you leave the door, right? Like, it's all right. I'm 2/3 done. Let me not drive into anybody on my way to the office. Time to turn around and go home. I got those 3 tasks done.
You're
Call it a
resisting
day.
the celebration thing, Chris Lampier.
I guess.
That sounds like a heck of a good day to me. We just call it good
Yes.
at the kissing our wife goodbye. I'm all set. I'm
Yeah.
done.
You know, you guys, I found in my notes here what he was talking about on the last hour of the day. I just like to read it just to kind of put the last nail in the coffin on this. Is what you do during the last hour before bedtime. The sweet spot, he calls it, is critically important. Your behaviors before bed are coded into your long-term memory. While you're sleeping, your brain processes everything you experienced for that day. What you do during that last hour before bed sets the tone for the rest of your life. That sounds like a pretty big statement right there for him to say that, but I do think it's a good seed. But it goes, he ends with saying, this is where your deepest habits are formed. How you end your day doesn't only determine how well you sleep, it dictates when you wake up. It orders how clear and directed you are when you are awake. I will tell you that I tried this last night, and I did wake up without my alarm clock today. I woke up at 5:40 in the morning and was ready to go. My alarm clock was set for like 6:15. So I did start my day earlier, totally refreshed. I don't know if it's a total onesie, a one-off, or what, but it would be great if it
Keep
worked
running
that
that
way every
experiment.
time. What, Ryan?
I said, keep running that experiment.
I
It
don't know. Let's
sounds
see
like
what
a good
happens
one.
tonight. We'll see. I'll check back in with you guys. I thought that was pretty cool. But I do think that there's some validity in having clarity at the end of the day. I'm sorry I keep coming back to that point, but
This is a quote from Byron Katie. Life is simple. Everything happens for you, not to you. Everything happens at exactly the right moment, neither too soon nor too late. You don't have to like it. It's just easier if you do.
Good.
I don't know how many of you has anybody read the work, the Byron Katie's The Work?
no.
Her work is very consistent with what we're talking about here. Her whole thing is stop arguing against reality. Reality is what it is. So when you say other people should do things, realize that that's your baggage, not theirs. No, that type of thing. Relate what I just said to the gap in the game. Why is he choosing her comment to put in here? Everything happens for you, not to you. Everything happens at exactly the right time, neither too soon nor too late. What is it? How does that relate to what he's saying?
Try to find something good out of every situation. Is that what you're thinking?
I think that's part of it.
Taking out the victim mentality that that people have, that turns it around, where instead of you have no control, now you have control because it's happening to you. You can choose how to respond to that. So it's in your power now. So something that was outside your power now is in your hands.
Yeah. Imagine the change in you if you, every time something happened to you, instead of judging good or bad, you simply turned into a detective to figure out what good thing that was all about.
Mm-hmm.
And how much of a different way of living that would be. It's incredible. What a treat. What a gift.
Again, I think a lot of value in teaching our team in the office these things, because what a lot of people do is like, oh, I've got a bad client, or this thing happened to us and we have to deal with it, versus, yeah, something happened. That's our job. Keep working on it, right? That's all you do. You just show up and you keep working. And it's a lot easier in your mind to do that than it is to think about what a crappy situation that fell upon us and we have to deal with.
There's a thing in happiness research and in positive psychology called explanatory style, and he touches on it in this quote. He said, "Your past is not fixed, but flexible. Your view of your own past actually evolves over time, even imperceptibly." And explanatory style says, let's say that for the sake of argument, we all go into a bank and we're standing there in line. We know this is all baloney because no one goes to banks anymore and no one stands in lines. But
Right.
let's just say this happened and a robber comes in. Now we're really stretching the bounds of reality because now apparently there are bank robbers again. And his gun goes off and he shoots you in the left arm. And the way explanatory style is, you got two choices here, two broad categories. One is, I'm so grateful no one else got hurt. I'm grateful he shot me in the left arm, not my good right arm. And the other is, can you believe my stinking luck? I went to a bank. Nobody goes to banks anymore. I waited in a line. Nobody waits in the line. And then I got robbed and I got shot in my right arm. And the point of explanatory style is that was a choice. Both of those things were true. You chose which one to emphasize, and it absolutely made the situation different. One of them made you feel better. The other made you feel worse. So when he says your past is not fixed but flexible, I think that's what he's talking about. He's saying, and to your point, Todd, customer just did something. How will you choose to describe it? Will you say the customer just did that for us so we could learn something? Or will you say the customer just did that to us? Because when you make the choice, you absolutely make the situation either better or worse based on your decision. Tough discipline, but super rewarding.
It could be kind of a game you could kind of play with yourself a little bit.
So you could do it with your team.
Right. Did I do it or not? Like, oh, yeah.
Something that we would normally judge as bad just happened. Let's find the gifts. Todd Musselman spoke to C11. I'm sorry nobody that's on here got a chance to see him because he was special. And he said that too many people spend their lives wishing for a better past. They spend their lives bemoaning the divorce they got, the business they wanted to start that didn't work out, when really, if they just accepted, this is kind of the Byron Katie thing, right? If you stop fighting reality, then you can move on. But when you're still fighting it, like you're just wishing, right? I wish that wouldn't have happened to the point where you can't move on. So I think that wisdom was in here. I think that he was trying to say that.
Oh,
You know,
go ahead, Ken.
I was just gonna go back to if it don't mind before we wrap up, if we can go back to that point that Brian was saying about the 3 points. I found it in my notes here. You guys may not remember. I forgot about this, but it's like around page 126 through 130. He talked about having 3 wins daily and how Jim Collins, he says, the business expert Jim Collins said, if you have more than 3 priorities, you haven't had any. And basically, I think what the author was trying to say out of the 3 says, if you feel like you're always winning and making progress, it keeps you in a state of momentum and confidence. After you've written 3 wins for the day, write down the 3 wins you'd like to accomplish the next day. No more than 3. Far too many people have 10 plus items, kind of like what you were talking about, Brian, on their daily to-do list, which is more than a sign of being busy than being more of a sign of being busy than being productive. The 80-20 principle explains that 80% of the results come from 20% of the activities. Rather than having 10 items on your to-do list, have no more than 3. I don't know how to prioritize the 3 then. Because you could do what Chris said, and you kiss your wife, you don't crash into somebody or whatever, and your day is over. I mean, how do you come up with 3? I don't know. I didn't mean to bring it back up, but here Jim Collins is saying if you don't have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any.
Yeah, I think Jerry's onto it. He's touched the wisdom here, which is what Jim Collins is talking about is strategic priorities. He's not suggesting that you don't have to, make AP transactions in the general ledger. That has to happen too. But 3 strategic priorities, you have to boil it down to. That is absolutely the case. My issue was putting these 2 things together. The 10 issues on your to-do list. I put a lot of things on my to-do list. They're not strategic priorities. I guess they are, right? I exercise because it makes me healthy. That's a strategic priority.
Right.
But I don't know. The 3 things you dismiss until you get down to that 20% that makes the big difference. It's very hard.
Agreed.
The priority might be that might be a bigger one, which is like a health thing. Like let's say losing 10 pounds. Well, to lose 10 pounds, I've got different tasks on my to-do list that contribute to that. So either I do the walking, stretching, and journaling that day, which all contribute to my one big priority, or I ignore all those and I do all these other tasks. And my one priority of getting better, healthier, didn't get accomplished. Maybe that helps.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is a facilitation error because here we are at 157 and we haven't talked about what book we're going to read next. So does anybody have a nominee? I'm going to write them down.
I do not personally.
I wouldn't mind saying to complete the trifecta and do Who Not How.
Who Not How.
Have you read it yet, Chris?
I have not.
I have. It's good. I have. It's a good book. Wow. If one nomination, see, Chris said, you said we only have 3 minutes. I'll give you one. Right. There. Boom. No other nominations?
I don't.
What was the one? I know you and Ken have read it, but the future self instead of the present self.
Be your future self now. We just read.
That's been done. Got it.
It's still a really good book, though. I would read it, Chris.
Yeah, cool.
Try to read it with your wife and kids.
Just so that we have another possibility. Ken has been pushing Outlive. Why don't we? This is about personal health, well-being. We could at least have 2 choices.
Excellent book.
I'm going to read it.
I've been listening to Outlive. That's like we need 3 months for that. That is a lot of content.
It is a big book. You're right. All right. Here's a short book. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's great. It's written as a parable, easy to read, short. All right. So here are our choices: Who Not How, The Herculean Effort of Outlive, or 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
I like all of them, so I'm going to read Outlive. I'm reading Outlive I'm going to do Outlive over the holidays, no matter what. Anyway, because I'm getting ready for next year, so I would like to do that book over again. But I will read it. I will read another book though, Brian, because
which one do you want to pick? Which one are you picking, Ken?
Well, I'm doing Outlive with or without you guys.
But it's not.
So I will do a second book. If you want to do Who Not How or 5 Dysfunctions of a Team would be fine too. I don't have a preference. I like every book we've ever read.
All right, Todd. Todd, make a preference. Make a choice.
Who Not How, sign.
Jerry.
I'm going to be on vacation, so
Jerry says I'm out. Chris.
I'll say Who Not How.
You can't we're at a majority. Who Not How it is. All right, I will send that out to everybody. We did it by 2:00. We are superstars.
Thanks, Brian.
Guys, thank you, and have a happy Thanksgiving. We all got a lot.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy holidays.
Bye-bye now.
Enjoy.